Welcome to the Nourished Brain podcast, where we focus on mindfulness-based whole foods nutrition and the art of empowered eating to optimize health, mood, energy, and nutritional well-being. I'm Sarah Fajera, an integrative and functionally minded registered dietitian and owner of Mindfully Nourished Solutions. Let's get you nourished. Kiki, welcome to the Nourished Brain Solutions podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay. Kiki, you had mentioned to me that adaptogens might be a beautiful topic to bring to this community who's listening to these episodes. And I just could not agree more. So I'm so glad to have you here. Before we jumped on the call, we were talking about how adaptogens are kind of the next level for nutrition and wellness intervention. So fill us in a little bit on where your interest comes from with this topic and what your background is specifically in the wellness space.
Yeah, so I've been in the health and wellness space for the past 3 to 4 years now, professionally. My background is in business, but over the past few years, I've been working with startups in the health and wellness space, mainly on the nutrition side, and decided to further my education in holistic nutrition, naturopathic medicine, all those amazing topics, which I know you love as well. And on that journey of learning more and working in these different startups, I came across adaptogens, of course, and herbal medicine. And that's really what I'm passionate about sharing information on right now. I have a blog. And I'm really just sharing my own journey in wellness. I'm coming from the perspective of a millennial female and just someone who, has the desire and the means to heighten their life, and hopefully sharing information that inspires other people to join me in that wellness journey.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Kiki. One of the opportunities I think we have at this point in kind of the whole continuum of all things wellness in our society is that we really do have the opportunity to optimize, certainly to help people to come back into balance and to help ourselves kind of support homeostasis and equilibrium in our own bodies and minds and with our wellness, but even to just kind of take it up a notch. And so it seems from what I know about adaptogens that they have the ability to support you no matter where you are on that continuum, whether you're not feeling so great or whether you're just ready to feel even better.
Absolutely. You've got that totally right. So I think a lot of us first, when we're on this kind of journey of optimizing how we feel, we think about those more tangible aspects like diet and exercise. And now, of course, meditation and more mindfulness practices are becoming a little bit more mainstream, which is great. And adaptogens are like that magic potion that takes everything to the next level, as you were saying. They work in the body, they're bi-directional. So just like you were saying, that they can bring us a bit of a lift if that's what we need, but they can also calm us down if that's what we need. And there's a word for that, amphoteric. And so they come into our body and they really do help to give your body exactly what it needs. So whether that's boosting your immune system, which, we all think that we'd want to do, but in some cases, if we're having an allergic reaction, we would actually need to downregulate our immune system. And again, that's what they would do. So they're really just that, as you said, a next level thing that you can add into your diet or your wellness regime, your supplement regime, to really make sure that you're operating from a sense of balance and stillness. And at the end of the day, it's all about stress. And if you can reduce stress, then that's a really easy hack to even get away with not having the best diet ever, the best exercise regime, or anything like that. I think stress is number one to combat and to work with rather than against. And that's really the beauty of adaptogens.
When I hear the word stress, you might have a similar vantage point. I think of psychological stress as first and foremost. That's what I identify the word stress with, but it also can really be related to physical stressors as well. So, maybe oxidative stress, or, if our body is not really getting what it needs to kind of balance out even the physical stress response above and beyond from just quote unquote feeling stressed.
Totally. And I think that we hear the word stress and we automatically think that it's a bad thing. Similar to now cortisol. Everyone, kind of hates on cortisol. And they're like, oh, God forbid, oh, I'm so stressed. But there is a healthy level of stress that's needed in our life in order for you to wake up and get out of bed. And, we need that cortisol in the morning firing, just like we need a little bit of stress to get our work done. And there's that healthy, U zone that that really serves us and can ensure that we're productive and happy and motivated. And of course, if that gets too much, if of course, if you have elevated stress levels, or if you're simply operating in a state where you're always stressed and you're not allowing yourself to come back down, then that's when it wreaks havoc on your health. And people listening to this might not think, like, they might not kind of resonate with, oh no, I'm not like a super stressed out person. A lot of people will just admit that they're stressed. But some people, I know for myself, I didn't necessarily think that I was a totally stressed out person, but I was very A-type. I was very on. And I now see that as, in a way, it's stress that is long-term. You're not letting yourself come back down. So it's like, are you giving yourself the breaks, the checking in with yourself, and just taking that time to kind of reset and to provide yourself with breaks? There's ultradian rhythm. Oftentimes we think of circadian rhythm. A lot of people, especially in like the biohacking world, really are familiar with the idea that cortisol is highest in the morning when you need to be awake, and then eventually melatonin kicks in at night. And unfortunately, in the world that we live in, when we're staring at laptops at night, or just in this sort of junk light, as I call it, and we're getting all that blue light, it's interfering with our melatonin, and it's thus interfering with our circadian rhythm. And so, yes, adaptogens can help with that as well. But what I wanted to mention is there's this thing called ultradian rhythm, and that's basically our cycles of activity and rest. And research is really showing that in order to be productive, happy, less stressed, you really do need to provide yourself with at least 15 to 30 minutes of a break every few hours. And so I kind of like to stack that with adaptogens and kind of offer people, or send out that invitation to kind of maybe have an adaptogenic beverage and have an adaptogenic tea, and make sure you're taking those breaks. And then you can really elevate those breaks that you are taking, that you are, taking the time to reset your system, and then actually put herbs in your body while you're doing that, that further enhance that whole process. And these things are just all available to us. They're all, a lot of them are very inexpensive. They're right there at the health food store. You can pick up some holy basil tea. And so it's just shocking to me that not everyone does. It's right there, and we can all feel better. And while we all want to jump on, the next best keto diet and the 21-day cleanse, the answer to your health and your happiness could be as simple as, taking an extra break every day and maybe sipping on a holy basil tea. That could have such profound effects without all the angst or the expense or the sacrifice of a lot of the other kind of black and white methods that we are marketed.
So that really sets the stage for thinking about this conversation. All the applications and the science and the detail we'll dig into here shortly, in terms of utilizing adaptogens along with other stress resilience practices, but done wisely and done almost strategically is what I'm hearing, in cooperation with our natural rhythms of energy and where our cognitive function really is primed. So part of this conversation sounds like, when should we even expect our bodies to be at their best cognitively or with attention or focus, versus looking at adaptogens as something that can just keep us on all the time, to your reference about type A, but instead thinking, how can we enhance our body's natural cycles and also with that be attentive to our need for rest in between? How do we make the most of those periods of time when our body is ready, when we're not in that rest period?
I love how you're picking up on the fact that, yes, adaptogens should not be used, or at least in my humble opinion, they should not be used to just keep going and like a coffee or, some stimulant that's sort of to push through. I think today, oftentimes now, the way that they're beginning to be marketed is kind of like this hack to your health that is a way to, stay on for longer and to, push it at the gym or push it, when you're studying. But that's not necessarily the case. While they can do that, and while I'm about elevating your state in the moment, it's more about working with that rather than sort of pushing it harder or against. So, I mean, obviously, when it comes to cognitive function and brain function and really enhancing that sort of performance, you can take adaptogens throughout the day and working with that particular goal. There's certain adaptogens in particular that would work best. And I mean, to dive a little bit into the science of that.
Yeah, Kiki, before we do, I just want to touch a little bit on the history because it's just kind of like elephant in the room a little bit. I've got to be really honest with you that, when I first heard this idea that adaptogens. So I'll tell you exactly where I was when I first had kind of this visceral response.
Everyone remembers.
I was at an expo. Gosh, this was it was years ago. I'm not sure how many, but it was the smack middle of winter, and I was walking around the expo floor in this big gym, and someone was handing out, I think it was tea bags or little packets of samples of something, and was using this word adaptogens, and she was saying that they would give your body whatever it needed, like if you needed a little bit of this, if you needed to bring yourself down, etc. And I, to be really honest with you, thought, yeah, right. But I had no idea of the context and the history, and certainly was not aware even until more recently. I would say over the past 6 months or so, since I've really, been honing in with adaptogens and studying a little more herbal medicine about all of the rich, even scientific literature that's starting to emerge, for these adaptogens that have had a pretty significant, just cultural use. We can talk about specifically the history, but I had mentioned ashwagandha to you, and my goodness, talk about a rich complexity of historical uses, right? So talk us through that a little bit with the historical context.
In terms of more of the modern history of adaptogens, that really began in Russia. So the former USSR in the late 1940s, they actually assigned the Soviet Academy of Science to create a product that increased the performance of their elite personnel. And that's actually how adaptogens were discovered in terms of the modern history. So one of the first herbs that they studied was Asian ginseng, and that's one of the adaptogens that does have a lot of research and science behind it. Since Asian ginseng didn't actually grow in the USSR, and it was very expensive to ship in, research shifted to eleuthero, which is otherwise known as Siberian ginseng. And that particular plant also met their newly created definition of an adaptogen. And that definition, there's so many definitions of adaptogens now, but essentially it needed to fit in three particular, basically match three criteria. And that was it must be non-toxic to the user, to the recipient, which basically means that there's minimal, if any, side effects. It needs to produce a non-specific response in the body, so an increase in the power of resistance against multiple stressors, whether they're physical, chemical, biological. So again, it's that building of adaptive energy to keep the body balanced. And then the third thing is that it has a normalizing influence on physiology. And again, that's irrespective of the direction of change. So how I mentioned, if it's going to be up-regulating your immune system or even down-regulating, they're going to go in and have that bi-directional effect. And so throughout the years that followed, after the 1940s, as research in Russia was coming further along, there was thousands of studies, mainly around Eleuthero, as I mentioned, rhodiola, and schizandra, or schizandra berry. And so that's kind of where the more paperwork kind of, okay, this is what an adaptogen is. That's when it was defined and that sort of thing. With that said, they've been used for thousands of years in both Ayurvedic and Chinese herbal medicine. They don't necessarily call them adaptogens, or they didn't. Ayurvedic medicine, I believe they call it Rasayana. I'm not even sure on the pronunciation, but that's sort of their equivalent of adaptogens. And then traditional Chinese medicine usually refers to them as tonic herbs or superior herbs, with the idea that they can be taken in copious amounts. You for extended periods of time. They're sort of like food. There's you don't need to be as cautious around them, and they support at least one of what they call it the three treasures. So there's your qi, your jing, and your shen. So again, that gets more into the spirituality of it. But I'm actually reading a really great book right now that talks a little bit about the history, and because in Ayurvedic medicine or in ancient India and China, a lot of this information was simply passed down sort of person to person and just in verbal language. So it's only in fairly recently where there's more of the scientific studies that are then backing up what they're claiming.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned tonic as a descriptor, which I think summarizes some of those effects that you've been describing really beautifully. I really like that word in terms of a lot of the concerns that Americans, are working with when it comes to stress and stress resilience. Can you talk us through, is there anything else you want to share about, from your perspective, how adaptogens, quote unquote, work? Any specific relevant, like biomarkers? The one study that came to mind for me was about ashwagandha, because this is the one that I'm like most interested in. And I had seen a study where they took a group of women and effectively just dosed them ashwagandha and measured their cortisol patterns. And they did see some modulation there, which is really interesting. What else would you share as far as, mechanisms or even biomarkers? Any info on that?
Yeah, totally. So I can share a little bit about how they work, and then I have some specific comments about ashwagandha, and that's a really great example to use after I explain how they work.
Awesome.
So again, at the high level, they really work by modulating our responses to stress, whether that's physical, environmental, emotional, and they help regulate and support the interconnected neuroendocrine, so the nervous system, the endocrine system, as well as the immune system. So if you could take something that boosts and that really helps support all of those systems, why would you not? Now, in terms of more of the scientific explanation of how it's actually working, because in the more traditional education around it, it does sort of sound just like it's magic, and it sounds almost salesy and gimmicky. So the explanation most accepted by scientific researchers really describes it as it stimulates the body's non-specific stress response, and that's through the HPA axis. So that's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, as well as the adrenal system. So by doing this, by supporting these systems, they really help our body to sustain an adaptive response to stress, and also then minimize some of the harmful effects that a prolonged stress response can cause. So if you think of it in like a two-part way, it's going to, and again, this is going to be high level just so people can understand, but
yeah, sure.
It not only helps you not get as stressed, but then if you are stressed and if you're operating in a level of more prolonged stress, it's going to help your body adapt to that state and also help with healing it afterwards. So when your body returns to balance and to equilibrium, it's sort of like the idea. I watched a great webinar from Aviva Ram that was describing it like if you watch the Discovery Channel and, there's a lion chasing a gazelle and, obviously they're both in this stressful circumstance. The lion's really hungry, so he's stressed out, and the gazelle is like a little bit stressed out because he's like might be dead soon, and he's, running for his life. But then if you notice, after that happens, the lion gets the gazelle, whatever, and then all the other gazelles are fine, and except for the one that was obviously captured. And then everything just kind of goes back to normal. And the gazelles are now just chilling, like even though it was totally like a frightened situation. And now the lion is just eating and he's, totally cool. And that's kind of how we need to live our lives a little bit more in terms of, if you're in a meeting and it's totally high stress and, someone calls you out on a project or a deliverable that, you didn't do, and your heart rate gets pulsing and you're in this, fight or flight kind of mode. But then you shouldn't be operating in that mode for the rest of the day. And unfortunately, that's the way that a lot of us, go about our lives, and we don't really return back to normal. So the adaptogenic herbs are, first of all, going to help us so that hopefully we don't get into a panic when we're in that tough meeting, and they're going to build up our adaptive energy and build up our sense of calm and ease. And because they're all potent anti-inflammatories, they're really soothing, and they kind of, again, they're helping us operate from homeostasis and from balance. So hopefully we don't even get into that stressful state, but of course sometimes we will be, and they're going to help us respond to that state. And then if worse comes to worse, we actually stay in that state for a longer period of time, they're actually going to help us kind of recover from it. The other example would obviously be more of like athletic performance and kind of physical exertion on the body. Again, adaptogens are all very potent anti-inflammatory. They're antioxidants. So they're going to help us recover both physically and mentally. I'm trying to think of any other specific, as I mentioned before, they do help support healthy biorhythms and circadian rhythms in the body. And that includes, just a normalization of body temperature, the production of cortisol. You mentioned ashwagandha, which is just the perfect one for if you are very stressed. It's a very gentle, soothing adaptogen. The ashwagandha in particular was traditionally used in India. That's some of the herbs are more like you think traditional Chinese medicine, and some of them are more Ayurvedic medicine. Ashwagandha is Ayurvedic, and it's considered both a food and a tonic medicine. It's very calming. It's anti-inflammatory. Generally, it's used to improve sleep, reduce anxiety, improve memory, reduce inflammation. While a lot of people think of it as more of a calming and soothing adaptogen that is as well helps you to fall asleep, you can actually take it throughout the day. Studies have shown that because it helps to regulate our cortisol levels throughout the day, it is actually better to take it, in the morning and midday and at night, rather than just, again, it's not like the pill that you pop just because you're like, okay, I want to get to bed. Like, I'm going to pop a pill of ashwagandha. You need to, in order to fall into a nice deep sleep at night, you need to be calm throughout the day. There's ashwagandha is really the herb that I recommend in terms of like my friends that are what's known as tired and wired. Oftentimes they're so go throughout the day that when they finally are able to hit the hay and go to sleep, and they're like, oh my God, so excited to finally sleep, they can't because they're still wired. And so ashwagandha is the prime herb for that.
A related note about the ultradian rhythm piece, I fell victim to this too, but I think just living in our really crazy, distraction prone world and society, that it can often feel like when we have 12 plates spinning, like so many of us do, like there's always more work to be done, right? Like the to-do list never ends. And so we often are feeling like we just do not have enough time over the course of a day. And so this is really interesting to me to think about using adaptogens in a different way, to really be strategic, like even with the example of sleep, to think in terms of, okay, so what time is it that I really need to stop exposing myself to bright light or to a computer screen or, to psychological stressors? And then with the time I have left, how can I reframe that to make the most of it so that I'm not feeling like I'm always go. Instead, I feel like, okay, like I have like these waves of productivity, but to bring those peaks up even higher than they have been, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that you touch on a good point, which is these herbs won't work if you just sort of take the herbs and don't do anything else.
Right. Yeah.
You really need to activate it by lifestyle considerations, just like you're mentioning. And that's kind of how I describe it as well. You need to really set yourself up for success when you're taking them. And it's not a matter of, oh, okay, I'm going to take ashwagandha before bed because I want to sleep better. It's a matter of, okay, looking at those factors that might be contributing to poor sleep, finding some adaptogenic herbs that will help support that, and then activating all of that goodness by, taking the time, whether it's self-care, whether it's really setting yourself up with a really healthy sleep regime where you're waking up and going to bed at the same time, where you're getting off your devices 30 minutes before bed, whether it's a journaling or a meditation practice. The science behind meditation and mindful movement, like yoga and qigong and those sorts of practices, really shows that you can actually change your DNA, change your genes, literally, by meditating, anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes a day. So they're really just one tool in your toolkit, but because they're operating on a slightly more subtle level, it is recommended that you kind of pair them with the right lifestyle modifications. It's not just a pharmaceutical pill that's going to kind of band-aid solution, and you're going to take one and feel it right away. The great thing about adaptogens is that they're safe, so you can build up this reserve of adaptive energy that you can kind of call on when needed. And yes, they can definitely, there's some in particular that you can take and you'll sort of feel it right away within like 10 or 20 minutes. But for the most part, they should be looked at as more of like a subtle enhancement to healthy changes that you're already making. And then that way, all of their effects are sort of amplified and the synergies are really amazing.
Mm-hmm. Really like toning the adrenal glands and toning the stress, the HPA axis, right?
Exactly.
Can you talk us through some more considerations that are quote unquote condition specific, places where, you yourself have had positive experiences with adaptogens or based off of the research or experience of others?
Yep, totally. So I think the main one is that, and now it's so trendy, is adrenal fatigue, and that's really what they're helping. The adaptogens help the adrenal glands respond more effectively and efficiently to the excess in hormones, and then when stress stops, they help the adrenal glands again shut down more quickly. So that sort of that returning to balance and to stillness. So for adrenal fatigue, a lot of people and a lot of herbalists will opt for American ginseng. That's one of the key ones there. Anxiety and depression is one that there's quite a lot of studies around. Again, that one's actually ashwagandha has a lot of studies that because adaptogens have a direct effect on your nervous system health, they naturally enhance your mood and relieve stress. When it comes to anxiety and depression, it's also important to consider nervines, which are nerve tonics. So they're not.
Let's talk about those.
Right? They're the best ever. So they are not adaptogens, but they support and complement adaptogens for the treatment specifically of like nervous system conditions such as anxiety and depression. So some of my favorites that I've used forever, chamomile, passion flower, lemon balm is a great one. St. John's wort has actually a lot of scientific evidence behind helping with depression. And so this is something that, maybe if you're taking ashwagandha as a tincture throughout the day to help with stress, and then consider maybe having a chamomile or a passion flower tea before bed, that's just going to take that to the next level. There's, of course, brain function and cognitive performance, which we sort of discussed. They have this direct effect on our nervous system health by again, really normalizing the neurotransmitter levels in the brain. And then thus they have the ability to increase the amount of mental exercise a person, can carry out. But also the studies show that the quality of that output is actually enhanced. So it's not even just a matter of, boost so you can work longer. It's as well, you can technically work longer, but that output is going to be of higher quality. Schisandra berry is a great one for that in particular. It provides that feeling of energy, but with the additional sense of calm. So similar to like swapping your coffee for a matcha tea, a matcha latte or something like that. Schisandra berry works in the same way. It has that L-theanine that brings you that state of calm. I think it was with matcha that monks use it to meditate. So even though it's energizing and it can keep them meditating for, several hours on end, it's not with that rush in energy and then a fall like caffeine. There's also a lot of studies around diabetes and blood sugar levels, like regulating that. And again, it comes back to keeping cortisol levels in balance. That is going to help regulate your blood sugar. When you're stressed, your body is just wants to protect you, and in order to do that, it's increasing glucose so that you have more energy to either fight or flight from the issue at hand. But unfortunately, if we're operating in that state all the time, and we're our blood sugar levels are always high, then that's very inflammatory. So they help with that. Of course, fatigue. Because they're providing that adaptive energy reserve that can be tapped into, great for athletes, whether it's during that extreme physical tension or just during recovery from fatigue. It really helps the body to withstand and recover from those kind of cumulative effects of stress. A lot of them also help the liver. Not all of them, but most of them help specifically with the liver as well, and can help against liver damage and dysfunction. Schizandra berry is the main one for that. Sex hormone regulation is another key one, whether it's women who want to balance their hormones. I think that's another thing it seems to be really trendy right now. Everyone thinks their hormones are out of whack, probably sometimes when they're not, just because you see it on Instagram and all these things, like everyone's hormones are off, like mine might be too. Adaptogens are a nice gentle support for that neuroendocrine balance, and they help to regulate and balance the sex hormones and the reproductive function, both for men and women. Sleep, of course, stress. There's also some sort of more specific ones, like specifically for helping hair, skin, and nails, weight gain, even arthritis, very specifically. And again, that's because they're potent anti-inflammatories. Something that I think is going to be emerging a little bit more, and I think that we're becoming more accepting of, is actually how much they help with our spiritual health and that mind, body, spirit condition. And several adaptogens have been used to aid meditation, and really just deliver those nutrients to the mind that are necessary to experience just, I know it sounds a little woo-woo, but like enlivened consciousness. When we're operating from a place of balance and from a place of being within our bodies, we can not only our physical health, but really our mental capacity and our spiritual capacity and our spiritual consciousness. And adaptogens are really, they're showing both anecdotally and also in science that they can help us do that. And I think that 2019, we're going to become a little bit more open to the idea that health is not just physical, it also has that spiritual and soul, I think it's called psychospiritual health. We're finally catching on to the idea that, maybe I should give this stuff a chance. It's not just a matter of, being healthy and taking your medication. It's also a matter of nourishing your soul and your spirit.
Wow. So yeah, covered a ton of ground there. Thank you for all the information. A few things that came to mind while you were describing, perspective with all of that is just this whole idea that I think is recognized to a point, but this whole idea that nutrition really does play into our central nervous system regulation. Like when you mentioned the L-theanine, I've seen data on that it impacts GABA waves. In the brain, which is something that individuals will supplement with. They'll supplement with GABA to help relieve those feelings of anxiety. So it just plays into that. What you were saying about the ability to just kind of be still and to focus and to kind of come back to your breath, right, with the meditation. Because really there are all of these nerves that innervate to your point about even this feeling of spiritual or mind body well-being that innervate our gut with our
Oh my
brains, right? With our
goodness.
stress response. Like it really is all connected. So,
It's
um,
crazy. It's
yeah, it really
almost like
is.
you almost feel cheated at the idea that we, like, yes, you can eat all of the healthy food and take all of the supplements, but I think this saying is, it's not what you eat, it's what you absorb.
Mm.
And if you're not in
And how
that
you
state,
eat.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you're not in that state of rest and digest, which is what adaptogens help you get into when
Mm.
needed,
Mm-hmm.
then actually it doesn't matter that you're frantically eating that super duper healthy kale salad, because you're not absorbing
Huh.
all of the goodness that it can be offering to your body, and you can still end up feeling kind of crap afterwards. And I think that can be really frustrating for people that are making these kind of very tangible health commitments and going out of their way to, like, hey, I'm going to get healthier, I'm going to get happier, let's do it. And they're sort of doing it from like checking off the list of like, hey, kale salad in, and like, but it could just be as simple as, hey, why don't you not even change your diet or take extra supplements? Why don't you just spend the next week mindfully eating, incorporate 5 to 20 minutes of meditation into your day, and just these little simple free hacks that you can do, and then go from there. And you'd be surprised at how much that would help.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, like adding the adaptogens into to that mix, it just really elevates everything.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to talk to you a bit more about really how to start to incorporate adaptogens or even nervines, if you want to speak to that a little bit more, into your day-to-day life. As a side note here, when it comes to herbal medicine, the little that I know, I think there's a couple of considerations to keep in mind as we go into this portion. That really plants, right, in all their forms, including herbs, do have a lot of active compounds in them. So not only are many of them really nutrient rich, right, the adaptogenic type properties, but also they really can shift biology enough that there can be drug nutrient interactions, right, or drug herb interactions. So I just wanted to mention that to make sure it gets in the conversation, at this portion.
Absolutely.
Since you had
I will
mentioned,
mention it as well before I get into
good.
that.
I'm glad. Especially like,
Yes.
St. John's wort and all of that, just to say, as people are listening to these wonderful suggestions and ideas that, I always like to encourage people to find someone that they can work with, a trained herbalist or someone else who really kind of knows their stuff, who can first assess to see, okay, so what is it that's going on? Like to your point about hormonal imbalance or adrenal fatigue, whatever it is, to make sure nothing's being missed, to make sure you're targeting the right root cause, but then also to look at the whole picture, what medications are on board and all of that, to really, help to keep the integration as safe and as effective as possible. So that being said, let's proceed. And yeah, pepper in as much of that as needed. This is just my dietitian mind coming out, just to make sure that people are aware.
Just a very short disclaimer on my end as well.
Yeah,
I'm
good.
herbalist, and I'm
Yep.
not a naturopathic doctor. So it's always great to, of course, work with a practitioner that can actually attend to your own unique individual wellness needs. And that might mean testing. And it's also going to mean, some people don't want to spend the money on, seeing a naturopathic doctor, whatever. But it's a lot more cost effective than just randomly going to the store and buying all these supplements that you may or may not need. Why not invest upfront with a little bit, and then most likely you'll just have a much smaller targeted supplement solution that actually works for you, rather than just kind of throwing away money mindlessly. So yes, with that said, so I mentioned that generally speaking, adaptogens are known as tonic herbs. So they're known more as food rather than like a specific medication. With that said, there are I mean, taking absolutely anything, just because it's a plant and that it's natural doesn't mean that it's automatically safe. There's definitely cases where that's completely not the case.
Yeah.
With adaptogens, they are generally safe. And so, if you're in a cafe and they say, oh, like, we can add some chaga mushroom to your latte or whatever, if there's ways to use them in what I call just recreationally, kind of in a smoothie, using a little bit of ashwagandha. I love ashwagandha and nut butter mixed together with a little bit of honey. It ends up, I don't know, tasting like chocolate. I don't know why.
Oh, I love that.
Really, but like, oh my God, I figured it out. And it's ashwagandha, nut butter, and honey, and it somehow tastes like chocolate. But again, those are more recreational uses. If you're looking to adaptogens to actually help you with a particular goal or concern, then that's something that you'd want to use a practitioner for. In terms of just getting a sense of what's out there and what's available, ashwagandha and reishi are two adaptogens that are generally more on the soothing, calming, safe side that work for most people, and that also don't have a negative effect in terms of being a little bit too stimulating. So on the other side of the spectrum, there are more of the stimulating adaptogens like eleuthero, which is known as kind of the performance and focus enhancer, even schizandra berry, which can be quite detoxing for the liver, but also provide that sort of that focus and that energy. And with those herbs, you wouldn't want to take them at night because they can interrupt your sleep. And as well, they could actually heighten, if you have anxiety, they can actually exacerbate that. So again, you really have to start slow, start small, go slow with the dosing, and someone, a practitioner, can advise you on that. I really do love incorporating herbs into food. Oftentimes we think of supplements as being capsules or tinctures, and that's great if you're following more of a specific regime, working with a practitioner. But there's nothing wrong with making some lemon balm cookies, and kind of incorporating it into your day-to-day life. And again, having that sort of, just think of it as like you're okay, a few pennies into my savings box. I'm putting a little bit of herbs into my adaptive energy reserve. And so doing that in food is a really nice, fun way. I love using maca powder in desserts, as well as I make a really great maca dressing for salad. Goji berries are indeed an adaptogen, and another one of the absolute safest ones. It really is more of a food. And so, making a goji berry tea, you can throw dried goji berries in just about anything, whether it comes to desserts or, sprinkle on a salad. There's actually a traditional Chinese medicine recipe that uses goji berries, lamb, and chestnuts that I just came across the other day, and I definitely need to make that. So they also work great in full main meals as well. The nervines are probably, so again, those are the nerve tonics that are very soothing and that can provide effects really almost instantly. Those are great to make as teas, or I do put them into baked goods. Even lavender, making lavender cookies. I think that all of this is I like to approach it from that way, so that it doesn't feel so pharmaceutical, and it's a way that you can start interacting with nature again. We live in, I live in, a condo, a high rise, and I don't often get to actually immerse myself in nature. And for me, the journey with adaptogens, yes, they've helped with my stress and working out, and I kind of use them strategically in that way as well. but they've really just been another avenue to connect with nature and to connect with, the gifts that Mother Earth has to give us, in a way that's fun and conducive to my everyday reality, which means sometimes sprinkling in, some shilajit into my, pre-workout smoothie, and, sprinkling some lemon balm over my stew or whatever. And it's done in a way that's mindful, and it has one of those, just like how I was mentioning, the lifestyle shifts that we need to make. When you make one thing, it's almost like contagious. It's just like when people, they start working out and then they kind of start eating healthier because they're like, oh, well, might as well. And all of these things really have a compounding effect. And that's how I like to look at adaptogen. So it's like, oh my God, amazing. You want to make some changes to your life. Usually people look to adaptogens, obviously for stress release and stress reduction. It's like, awesome. Let's use that as an excuse to be like, okay, now you're taking ashwagandha because you want to feel more calm throughout the day. You want to, stabilize and kind of promote healthier cortisol levels throughout the day and get better sleep. Great. So now you're officially taking that, and we can kind of check that off our very Western approach to, you know what I mean? Like, okay, taken something, and then it's like, okay, but in order to like activate it, you need to, pick one or two, self-care strategies that you're going to commit to throughout the week. And so it's almost like, not saying that they have I don't want to come across like they're, just a placebo effect and it's just kind of like take them so you can, actually do it. You genuinely have, a scientific backing that they actually change things in your body. But like, they're as well just an excuse to kind of implement all those other good things into your life.
Yeah. So it sounds like really, in summary, what you're saying, in addition to all the great detail you provided, is that there's a time and a place for tinctures or using herbs medicinally, even thinking about adaptogens in that way. But there's also a contrast where, the really safe, like a chamomile, right? Things that don't have a lot of documented interactions, et cetera. Those things can really be integrated into your life, just like we would use herbs and spices. We can start to think about, okay, so how frequently am I bringing in these plant-based compounds, that have some adaptogenic support or properties to them throughout my life, and where is there opportunity to support myself or nourish myself in a different way, throughout the course of my day. So I love that. Just kind of like sprinkle here, stir a little in here, right? Make a tea here.
Yeah. I often joke, I'm like, it would be rude not to. Just, pop a little bit of matcha powder in your smoothie. I mean, it makes it taste like extra caramelly. So why not?
Yeah. So because there is just so much to think about here, and there's so many options and opportunities, right? Can you just talk us through some places and directions that people could take if they're interested in learning more? What are your top go-tos as far as books or websites or resources? And you have a site too. You had mentioned your blog. So tell us a little bit about that, what people can find there.
Yeah. So my blog would obviously be the best resource. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I do document lots about adaptogens and other things in the world of health and wellness. It's called Me by Kiki. It was called Mindfully Exponential, and we sort of folded that into this new lifestyle brand that I'm creating that really is about investing in yourself. And so hence the Me. So you guys can check that out at mebykiki.com. In terms of how I learned about adaptogens, I think the first figure in my life that really brought the excitement around adaptogenic herbs into my everyday was good old David Wolfe. He's one of those people you love him or you hate him. I personally love him. He is, I'm not quite sure what he's specifically even considered at this point, but he's got some wonderful books. I did his health coaching course.
Oh, yeah?
I loved it. And it was all video. And he talked a
Oh.
lot about, again, how to incorporate these herbs into our life in a way that's fun, so talking about putting the maca powder with the shilajit, with the cacao, and like just getting really excited about how it tastes and what it's going to do for you. So he's a great person to just watch some videos and get excited about. Dragon Herbs is a store, but they also have a website. It's based in California, and Ron Teeguardan is the founder there, and he's got some wonderful information about adaptogens. He's sort of the modern guru on tonic herbalism. So Ron Teeguardan is someone to Google and follow. And then in terms of books, and if for those that they really want to be like, okay, I need to understand how they're changing the HPA axis, and specifically I want the clinical uses and all that stuff, all the monographs on adaptogens. There's a fabulous book. It's called Adaptogens. Didn't see that coming.
Imagine.
Herbs for strength, stamina, and stress relief. And it's by David Winston and Stephen, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, Stephen Maimes. That book, oh my God, no one can read that book and then not want to take adaptogen. It's like they mold all of the information from both taking out the juicy bits from traditional practices and then merging that beautifully with all of the science behind it. It's a great place to start. And then when you feel called to start working with one, or if you have an issue specifically that you're looking to heal, a little bit of intuition and then working with a practitioner.
So you had mentioned monographs. So those are really just comprehensive profiles of herbs, right? Of their actions and their traditional uses and clinical overview, all that good stuff.
Botanical names.
Yeah.
Constituents.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind sending me links to those, I can post them below the audio. Another one that comes to mind for me, another resource, is the American Botanical Council, because they have a lot of like safety information there, and also more monographs. Just another place to dig even deeper.
Yes.
So.
And I think Aviva Ram, who
no question,
she's like on the board or something.
Yeah. I was like Aviva Ram. I just her name. I'm like, of course everyone knows.
I know.
Absolutely.
She's my friend. I've never met her. But.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Her resources are fantastic. And she's been an herbalist for a long time, and she's a trained MD as well. So, exactly. Yeah, she's got great resources. So beautiful. So I hope this has been really a helpful introduction to those who are listening, or has just provided some additional ideas or inspiration for how to bring in some plants and adaptogens, maybe just a touch of herbal medicine for culinary uses into day-to-day life to support optimal well-being. So Kiki, any final thoughts? Anything else that feels really, really important to mention as we close up here?
You know what? I think we've covered a lot. I had a really great time. I think if anything, if you listen to this podcast and you take away one thing, it's that the importance of self-care and love for yourself, and whether that's through adaptogenic herbs or whatever other modality. I think that we're all a little bit too hard on ourselves, and learning more about adaptogens and specifically how it relates with the stress response and all that jazz. It just really, it subtly drives home the message that it's like, wow, we all just, chilling out would do us so much good. So yeah, be kind to yourself and love yourself.
I love it. And go get a cup of chamomile tea.
Exactly.
Kiki, thank you so much for your time, for your generosity with sharing information. And head over to Kiki's site, her lifestyle brand, to just kind of keep immersing yourself in all of this great knowledge and the how-to of it all. So enjoy the rest of your day, Kiki. Thank you again so much. Sarah here, owner of Mindfully Nourished Solutions. It's my goal with this podcast to explore strategies for empowered and well-informed food and eating decisions. If this information has been supportive to you, please head over to iTunes to rate this episode and to leave a review about what was most helpful. To learn more about how food is impacting the way you feel on a day-to-day basis, head over to my website at mindfullynourishedSolutions.com for a copy of my free food mood journal. See you next time.